Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Jennifer Taylor, and welcome to today's tutorial on analyzing ordinal data in SPSS. And before we jump into SPSS, I want to take a minute to review scales of measurement, because this is important in understanding why we're performing the analysis that we're performing. And for those of you in my class, hopefully you remember that there are 4 different scales of measurement. There's ratio scales, interval scales, ordinal scales, and nominal scales. And these are arranged from most robust and the richest data, meaning that it does the most, you can do the most statistical analysis from, down to the lowest, which is nominal, where we can do the least amount of statistical analysis. There's a couple key things to remember. Anything on the higher level can be transformed into what is below it. So ratio data can be transformed into interval, ordinal, or nominal data. Interval data can be transformed into ordinal or nominal data. Ordinal data can be transformed into nominal data. And it's also important to note that you cannot transform upwards, meaning that you can't transform nominal into ordinal data or ordinal into interval or interval into ratio. So now that we understand the scales of measurement, we're going to be focusing on ordinal data. So what is ordinal data? Ordinal data, you can tell by its measurement items if it's ordinal data. And ordinal data is categorical and it is hierarchical. So it's those two things. It's categorical and it's hierarchical. And so you have these categorical descriptions of the characteristics of the attribute that you're measuring, and you have these numerical values that you assign to these descriptions. But one category is better or more than another. And that's what makes it ordinal versus nominal. And it's also ordinal rather than interval because they are unequal groupings of the categories. So if we have age, each category is a different size, versus in an interval scale, each group would be of equal units. Okay, so some examples of ordinal data are income. We could ask income. We could ask people what their income is and make it a ratio question, have a ratio data from it. However, people typically don't like sharing their income data when you ask them specifically, what is your income? They're more willing to answer questions that are in categories. So it's better to ask it in an interval or ordinal scale. So also education. Where one level of education can be more or better than another level of education. Age, if you put age into these categories grouped by unequal intervals, then it's ordinal data. And then you can have things like frequency of visits. So asking people, how often do you visit? And you provide them with answers, and each category of answers is an unequal group. So what statistics are reported for ordinal data? Well, there's 4 primary statistics: median, mode, frequency count, and frequency percentage. And it's important to note here that mode, frequency count, and frequency percentage are also calculated for nominal data. And then for ordinal, we add one additional statistical analysis, which is median. So how do you analyze this in SPSS? Well, I'm going to have you work along with me. I have a Pets and More SPSS data set that I created, totally fictional. And you can either find it in your Blackboard or Canvas content folder, in the tutorial content folder, or if you're on YouTube, you can use the link to the data set in the YouTube description below. So it should look a little like this. And what you'll see is we have the variable names, the type, the labels. We'll open that up so you can see it, which are the questions, the survey questions, the values, which are the answers that were available to respondents. And so you have these for all the questions. Now, I have the variable names so that it's ORD means ordinal, RAT means ratio, NOM means nominal, INV means interval. I usually do not label my variables this way. I'm doing it strictly to make it easier for you as you're learning how to do this analysis. I typically would name my variables based off of the survey question. So for example, how often do you visit Pets and More? I would name this visit. On average, how much do you spend each time you visit Pets and More? I would name this variable spend. What was your primary reason for visiting Pets and More today? I would name this one reason, and so on and so forth. So I would typically have a different variable name, but again, to make it easier for you as you're learning about the different variable types, I have done it this way. So if you didn't have them labeled so nicely, how would you figure out if they were an ordinal, nominal, ratio, or interval variable? And really what you have to do is first look at the survey question. So how often do you visit Pets and More? And then look at the answers that respondents were given to choose from. So how often did you visit Pets and More? Daily, 2 to 3 times a week, once per week, 2 to 3 times per month, monthly, once every 2 to 3 months, once every 6 months, once a year, less than once a year. Those are categorical, they're hierarchical, and then they also have unequal groupings. So that would make it a ordinal variable. On average, how much do you spend each time you visit Pets and More? This is an open-ended question where they could answer anywhere from $0 to infinity amount of dollars. And that's what makes it a ratio. It has that 0 point, and it's open-ended, which is helpful. Okay, so nominal. What was the primary reason for visiting Pets and More today? If you look at the answers they could choose from, I wanted to make a purchase, I was just browsing, I was researching a product or service. Those are just categories. There's no hierarchical order to it, which makes it nominal. And then you have interval. Overall, how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with your selection of products? And it's a 7-point scale with extremely dissatisfied, moderately dissatisfied, slightly dissatisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, slightly satisfied, moderately satisfied, extremely satisfied. And so this is an interval data point. And so it's important to note here that this survey question, overall, how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with this scale, this measurement scale of extremely dissatisfied, the 7-point item? In some disciplines, this is considered a ordinal variable rather than an interval variable. In marketing, we tend to view it as interval variables for one very important reason. The difference between interval and ordinal is that you can report means for interval data. Now, with ordinal data, the argument as to why it is ordinal and not interval is that each individual person would have a different distance between extremely dissatisfied and moderately dissatisfied and slightly dissatisfied. So they would interpret the scale differently, and therefore those measurements are unequal. However, marketers tend to view it as one unit between, and that when you present a mean of this data and of this scale, that it is valuable information, and that the standard deviation gives us measures of dispersion and provides us with additional understanding that is valuable. So marketers a lot of times will categorize Likert scales as interval scales and report means, even though that is not the case in all disciplines, and it is a very active argument that occurs across disciplines in different faculty members. So I do advise you, if you're not in marketing, to run this notion of Likert scales and whether they're interval or ordinal run it by your faculty members just to double check to see which camp they're in and which camp that you should be in. All right, so moving on, we'll take a look at the rest of these ordinal variables. What is the highest level of school you've completed? And if you look here, it's less than high school degree, high school graduate, some college, et cetera, et cetera. So it's hierarchical and it's categorical, but there's no, it's unequal intervals. And then you look at this last ordinal variable, please indicate the answer that includes your entire household income. And we have scales less than 10,000, 10,000 to 19,999. And so it looks like they're all about 10,000. And then you get down to 11, it's 100,000 to 1,499. And then 12 is more than 150,000. And so it is it is unequal measurement scales, which makes it ordinal. Okay, so now we've identified our 3 ordinal variables. Let's go on to analyzing them. So you're going to go to Analyze. So click Analyze, and then go down to Descriptive Statistics, and Descriptive Statistics, over to Frequencies, click it, and you're going to have this window pop up. Now, notice that these are your survey questions. You want to identify what survey questions are ordinal and put them in this variable box. I personally have a hard time reading these questions. For me, it's always easier to display the variable names. So in order to do that, you're going to right-click. Okay, right-click, and then display variable names. And then it's going to show you these variable names. And now another neat trick is if you right-click again, you can do sort alphabetically. And then you can scroll down, and all of the ORDs are in alphabetical order. You click the first one, and then I hit Shift, and I click the third one. And because I clicked that Shift button, it highlighted all 3 of them, shifted over to the variable box. Now I'm going to go from the variable box, and I'm going to tell SPSS what statistics I want reported. I want the median and the mode. I'm going to click Continue. And that's it. I'm displaying the frequency table, so that's going to give my count and my percentages. And I'm going to click OK. And now you should see an output. You should see the output document. And right here, you have the 3 ORD variables. Tells you that 119 respondents answered this question. Nobody did not answer the question, so we have no missing answers. We have a median of 5, which you'd have to go and look on the labels to see what 5 means for this question. A 4, a 7, and then we have a mode of 5, a 4, and a 7. So now we can look at our frequency tables. And we have our first frequency table. As you can see, we have our labels for the answers that the respondents could have picked. We have the frequency. This tells us how many of the respondents stated that that was their answer. And then we have this percentage, which tells us what percentage of that sample of the respondents answered that. Now, over here, you have valid percent. And for this particular sample that we have, the percent and valid percent is the same, but it would be different if you had any system missing. So if anybody did not answer this question, which on some questions, you might have it where people haven't answered it, especially if it's like a multiple response nominal variable or something, then this valid percentage is going to tell you what percent of the people who answered it have, so what percent of the people who answered that question. And then the percent, there would be another line item right here that says system missing, and it would give you a count of how many system missings there are and tell you what percent of the population it was. So we don't have any system missing, and that's why there's a difference. Now, this cumulative percent, it just sums up the percentages until you get to 100. And so we have that for our 3. We have ORD2, we have that for that. And we can see that 21.8% of our sample has an associate's degree. We can look down here and we can see that the largest percentage of our population makes between 60 and 69,999. And so that is all you need to do to create the SPSS output. Now, I have a separate video that talks about how do you transform this SPSS output into an Excel chart. But for your output, this is all you need to be able to create your output. Make sure that you save this output. You're going to need it later. So go to File, click the Save As or Save button, and Save As if you want to save it to a specific place in your computer. And then you can use that for later when we're going to make charts from this data. And that is how you analyze ordinal data in SPSS. Please click like if this video was helpful, and don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to learn how to transform SPSS output into Excel charts that you can use for your data presentations, please go to my video entitled Transforming SPSS Output into Excel Charts under my Reporting and Presenting Data playlist. Other than that, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you very much. Bye.